Welcome to Plain Talk Politics. I'm Jeanne Bonds. This is plain talk about the people, the process, and the facts so you can make an informed decision. Welcome back to Plain Talk Politics. Our guest today is veteran Congressman David Bryce from the 4th Congressional District. Thank you for being here, David.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
Let's talk a little bit about everything that's going on in Congress. People are so interested, especially in the appropriations process, and I know you've been a part of that for a long time. What is going on with that, if anything?
Appropriations process is the key power of the Congress, the power of the purse, the ability to take on the administration, no matter who the president is, no matter what party, for the Congress as an institution to hold the executive branch accountable. That's the way I look at it, and it's why I think over the years appropriations has gotten a reputation as a relatively bipartisan operation that attracts senior members of both parties to really do a careful job. That, I think, is in jeopardy. You know, whatever else you think about shutdowns and all the budget shenanigans that totally unnecessary, I should add, the crisis atmosphere that's been created. In the midst of all this, one of the losses that people might not be fully aware of is that careful appropriations process, because you keep up, you end up patching the government together, keeping it open for a month, 2 months, what we call continuing resolutions. But that's a far cry from the carefully worked out appropriations bills that we've prepared on Homeland Security. That's the one where I'm the ranking Democrat, was the chairman for a number of years. There are 12 committees like that, each of which have a bill ready to go. And one of the questions in this whole process now is, at least for the last 8 months of the year, are we going to have carefully worked out appropriations bills, or are we going to have just another stopgap measure?
What are those committees doing right now? Are they just kind of on a holding pattern with their particular area that they're supposed to be focusing on?
I guess that's a good way to put it. It's not totally a holding pattern. I mean, we're doing lots of thinking and lots of staff work on what those eventual bills might look like. But it's hard. I mean, it's very damaging to not know whether your work will ever see the light of day. I mean, that's just human nature. You have these professional staffs. You have lots of hardworking people who are preparing these bills, but with the uncertainty, just like uncertainty doesn't do us any good in lots of areas in this country, including the economy. But uncertainty in legislating means that you just don't know whether what you're doing will in the end make a difference. I hope it will, because I can just tell you, for the Homeland Security bill, there's all the difference in the world between a continuing resolution that just kind of patches it up for a month or two, or even for a full year, and a well worked out bill where you have the results of all the hearings, all the consideration you've given to what's working, what isn't, what needs more money, what could use less, and so on. That's what appropriations is.
Well, do you think there's a solution to this issue? I mean, or is anyone even thinking about a solution?
The solution is made difficult by our very divided, very polarized politics, but I don't think you have to look too far. I mean, I've been in Congress a while, long enough to remember the budget agreements, the major budget agreements of the 1990s. One of them was bipartisan with the first President Bush and the Democratic leadership of the Congress. The second was admittedly heavy lifting on the part of Democrats alone. That's the one Erskine Bowles was involved in with the Clinton administration. But those were comprehensive. They gave everybody something to dislike. You know, they raised taxes. They also cut spending, and they cut a lot of spending, every category. And so, yeah, they did the job. We had 4 years of balanced budgets. We paid off $400 billion of the national debt. The test right now is, do we get even close to that kind of agreement going forward? if we could do that, if we get our fiscal house in order and also get this economy moving again, and both of those are important. Budgeting isn't just about cutting everything in sight. It's also about investing, about getting your economy moving, and that's a good cure for a budget deficit, by the way, to have a robust economy. If we get back on that kind of footing, then the appropriations process, the more orderly, more predictable, more stable kind of process of running the government, can be reinstated. And that's my hope, because I really believe in that process. But if you're just lurching from crisis to crisis, and this Tea Party faction among the Republicans, really, they're the only ones who really promote this and want it, but they've managed to leverage the whole Republican Party. If that's the way we're operating, then it's very hard to do anything other than just damage control.
Well, I know one bill of particular interest is the Farm Bill, and in the past, most Americans weren't really that interested in the Farm Bill. They saw that as something rural America was interested in. But we have this collision between food stamps in the SNAP program, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and subsidies. And we kind of see this colliding. And I know that starts this week. So that's a particular bill that's kind of gotten bogged down in this lack of appropriations process. What do you think is going to happen with that bill?
Well, the process that we've been describing, the dynamic that we've been describing, this extreme polarization, and I have to say it's especially the direction the Republican Party has taken. Not just that we're divided, but that there's a faction that has just been taken this extreme anti-government, anti-tax position, and has been willing to hold everybody else hostage if they don't get their way. I mean, that has affected everything. Like you say, it's not just the budget, it's not just appropriations, it's also the Farm Bill, it's also immigration reform, even more. And I just don't know how much of any of this is going to get done. You talk about the nutrition and food stamp program alongside the commodity programs in the Farm Bill. That has been a very productive marriage. They're two distinct components. They appeal to different constituencies, but actually they've blended very nicely. And by the way, American agriculture does very well by the SNAP program. I mean, it funds the purchase of a lot of food products for people who really need the support. So it has been a very useful blending of different elements in that Farm Bill, and that's what is threatening now to fall apart. We have a surprising degree of agreement on the farm side of the Farm Bill. To move the commodity payment system more into a kind of crop insurance model, so you're not just doling out funds, but you're really responding to market difficulties, and you're providing some kind of safety net, but you're not just subsidizing regardless of the market. There's a lot of agreement that we need to move in that direction, and that there could be some savings there, some budget savings there. Where the difficulty comes is in this Republican desire to cut billions of money, of dollars from the food stamp program, and I don't quite understand it. I confess I don't fully understand it. There seems to be a storyline going there that these folks don't deserve help, that they're getting, they're buying lobster with their food stamps, or whatever. It really is mean-spirited stuff. The average food stamp recipient is, I think it's something like $1.30 a meal is the level of the assistance. These are folks who are temporarily out of work, or some of them are working at very, very low wage jobs. Overwhelming the food stamp recipients are families with children. I mean, this is essential support for some of the most vulnerable people in our society, helping them get back on their feet. And the criteria, the program's very well administered. I mean, we're not passing out cash to people after all. This is food assistance. It's food. It's about the very basic requirement of keeping your family going, and so it's had broad bipartisan support. But that's what's really changed. I mean, there's a group in the Republican Party, and they seem to have great influence in the Republican Party. A group that just says we're going to just cut this mercilessly, and I just say our side is not going to go along with this. The president's not going to go along with it. So we want a farm bill very badly, but the farm bill, unfortunately, is being, I'd say, held hostage by those who are looking for a pound of flesh in that food stamp program.
So what do you think is going to happen with that particular bill? It affects about 1.7 million North Carolinians, just looking at our state. Is it going to make it through this process, or is this going to be part of another shutdown?
That's a big question right now that I have a hard time. I don't have a very good crystal ball on it. I mean, if you put a reasonable farm bill, which I would say is the Senate bill, which tightens up some of the administration of the food stamp program but doesn't have these drastic cuts, if you put something like the Senate bill on the floor of the House tomorrow, it would pass. But it would pass with Democrats and with a minority of Republicans, you know, the kind of more moderate Republicans. But Speaker Boehner really is under a lot of pressure not to put the bill on the floor until it has majority Republican support. Well, what kind of decimating of the food stamp program is going to have to take place before the majority of Republicans will support the bill? I don't think the answer to that is very, very hopeful. I don't think I can't see the Senate coming together with that kind of extreme faction of House Republicans. So I'm pessimistic. On the other hand, there's a lot of folks who need a farm bill, including a lot of people in this state, and we're hearing from them every day. So there is pressure to get this done. I just hope that that pressure in this case is a very good thing, because it might lead some people to forego this kind of ideology that has set them against food stamp recipients, kind of overcome that for the sake of getting a bill in place.
And I wanted to ask you about the effect of the shutdown and some of these issues on our Department of Health and Human Services in North Carolina. Because during the shutdown, our state was the only one. First we cut off the WIC program, which was children under 5 and pregnant mothers. And then we shut down the Work First program, which was part of TANF. And in both cases, our governor said that was due to the federal government shutdown. But I know you and 2 of your colleagues wrote a letter to him inquiring why we were the only state in that situation.
We weren't just inquiring. We really knew that there was something very wrong here. If 49 other states could manage to take the assurances which the federal government was giving, I mean, we know that for a fact. They were giving assurances that the funding would be there, not to interrupt these services to the most vulnerable people in the state. That there was no reason for North Carolina to be an outlier here. I mean, a lot of these other states, after all, have Republican governors. They're very conservative states politically. It was good enough for them. Why wasn't it good enough for North Carolina? I still don't have an answer to that. I really don't. And I say that as someone who has no use for this shutdown. Now, on that, you know, I really have no patience for it. There was no reason for the shutdown. It was artificially created. I give the administration credit, though, with these programs, the WIC program, the Women, Infants, and Children's Nutrition Program, and the so-called TANF program, which is called Work First in North Carolina. These programs, they offered assurances in slightly different ways, but still, in both cases, assurances good enough for 49 states that the money either was right there or it would be there, and there was no reason to interrupt services. And in both cases, the McCrory administration decided otherwise. Now, in the WIC case, I think they got wind that this might not be going over too well, so they did reverse themselves abruptly. But in Work First, they cut off taking new applications for a couple of days, and then that was reversed only by the end of the shutdown.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the recent jobs report that came out from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It talks a lot about the number of people who aren't participating in the labor force. We're at record levels. I think that matches up a little bit with the numbers and some of the opposition on the food stamp program, because we see those in tandem. People don't have jobs and living wages, so they're having to have subsidies. We talked about immigration. I think there's probably some other bills in Congress on infrastructure coming forward. Can you talk about some things Democrats are putting forward as solutions to what everybody sees as kind of the jobs crisis?
The jobs crisis is part of a larger economic slowdown, a very sluggish recovery that goes back to the unfortunate near recession, near depression that we had. It was certainly a recession that we had in 2008, 2009, and we've been very slow climbing out of. The first thing that President Obama did when he came into office was to propose a Recovery Act, and I was very proud to be part of that. We saw some very tangible results of that here in North Carolina. We built a new National Guard headquarters that we've been waiting to build for a long time. That involved 4,000 jobs. It also gave us something for the future. So there was an effort there that did slowly turn the economy around, and we've had slow, steady job growth for dozens of months, years now, with always wanting for it to be better, though, and knowing that it could be better. You talk about this recent government shutdown, the near default on the national debt, that kind of artificially created crisis. This comes from people, by the way, who profess great concern for jobs, who profess a great concern for the economic situation of the country. Well, what they've done is slow economic growth by a percentage point. That's by a third or a fourth of what it could have been. That's what a government shutdown does for you. Nothing very good. Creates a lot of uncertainty. Takes money out of the economy. Has ripple effects through with businesses and so forth. It's not good. And then you ask yourself too, what could we have been doing that this keeps us from doing? My own view is that the recovery is nowhere near complete, and that there needs to be some attention paid to bringing it back to full strength, bringing the economy back to full strength, getting people productive. That's the best cure for a deficit. It's also something that our state particularly needs. We've been one of the hardest hit states. So I also think about the lessons we've learned here in the Triangle for a number of years about the role of good public policy in producing a robust, diverse, resilient economy. Public education, community colleges, investment in infrastructure, investment in research, nurturing of startups. I mean, you know the story. The Research Triangle story is not driven by government. It's driven by businesses, large and small, but government sure is part of the equation. We didn't get here by demonizing government. We got here by being smart about government and smart about public-private partnerships. And this new crew in the General Assembly and this new crew in Washington, in the House leadership in Washington, somehow didn't get that memo. And I admit to being taken aback by the extent of the hostility toward all things governmental and the willing to dismantle things that have been a proven success. I mean, we always should be ready to reconsider and ready to think about what we're doing, and nobody gets a blank check in this government. They shouldn't. But at the same time, just to throw overboard what I would take to be the lessons of the last 50 years here in the Triangle area, I think it's foolhardy. I think we need to just make sure that we kind of get a hold of our politics again. Steady the ship here. Let's exercise fiscal responsibility, but let's also remember that there is a word, investment. That word means something. Not all spending is created equal. And investment is what you do to prepare for the future, and I'm afraid right now we're not doing enough of that.
And I guess thinking along those lines, the Affordable Care Act is certainly being demonized by one political party in terms of being the halter to job growth, the promoter of part-time jobs. We're now seeing a full House hearing on the technology aspect of the Affordable Care Act. Where do you think that goes?
I think the Affordable Care Act can be a great boon to the country and to the economy. Just think about North Carolina again, and the implications of rejecting Medicaid coverage for 500,000 people. you need to think about those people and the health coverage they need. Most of them work, by the way, just don't have coverage. But even if you aren't concerned about those people, think about the billions of dollars that North Carolina is leaving on the table. Think about 20,000 jobs that are associated with this. That's just foolishness to let your hostility to the president or to health care reform blind you to that kind of economic benefit for the state. Health care reform is a large undertaking. Most people's insurance, despite all the drumbeat of recent days, most people's insurance, they get through the workplace and it will remain in place. There will be new options available on the marketplace for individuals and small businesses that have not been covered before, and that will help all of us in the end, because the estimates are that each of us is paying $1,000 more on our insurance each year because of people who aren't covered and who therefore end up in emergency rooms and whatnot, and drive up the cost for everybody else. Also, healthcare reform is aimed, it doesn't totally solve this, but it's aimed at beginning the task of getting costs under control. And there are lots of incentives in this law for a more cooperative, collaborative kind of care where people aren't out just specialist shopping, but they have some coordinated care, and that's good for them. It's also good for costs, and we're seeing already Medicare costs. That cost curve is being bent, and so yes, it is relevant to costs, both for individual families and for businesses. It's relevant to the long-term solvency of Medicare. The Affordable Care Act has added 10 years to Medicare's solvency. They're again not a final solution, but a positive step. So you also mentioned some of the glitches, some of the problems, and I'm baffled and dismayed by the website problems. Those just have got to get fixed so that people can access that. In the meantime, of course, they can call the hotline. They can go in person and sign up. But we need to get that fixed. It needs to be there for people, and there also need to be some adjustments in the law. For example, the treatment of part-time workers, I think, needs to be adjusted so that we're not inadvertently forcing people into part-time status. You know, every law that we've ever rolled out has needed some adjustments along the way. This is the only one I can remember where one side of the one political party was simply refusing to make any improvements because they didn't want it to work. I mean, that's unconscionable, and that's got to be changed. I mean, I hope we can get to the point where this is implemented. It's working. We can have some agreement. If we don't agree on every aspect, at least we can have some agreement on some things that can make it work better for all of our people, and really take that as our point of view rather than scoring political points.
I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about any other ideas or legislation in Congress. We briefly mentioned the immigration bill, but are there other things that people in North Carolina should be paying attention to?
Well, immigration is a good one because we do have a chance to have, I think, a serious, comprehensive immigration reform. It's passed the Senate. It's one of the few things these days that does have some bipartisan support, although, again, this conservative influence in the House of Representatives has made it uncertain whether a comprehensive bill can pass the House. But there sure is a lot of interest in this. I mean, all the farm interests, businesses large and small, religious groups from the very conservative to the more liberal. I just haven't seen. I think in normal times we would have had that bill a good many weeks ago. But because politics is so polarized, and because this kind of Tea Party influenced faction has such sway over the House, that makes even something as obvious as immigration reform, and I think it's obvious that this is something that just has to be fixed, makes it hard to do. So that's a good case in point. There are other things like, as you said earlier, we need a transportation bill in this country to repair our roads and bridges and get moving again, literally get moving again in the country, and to help the economy. There are many things that are awaiting a budget agreement and some kind of coming together, despite our divisions, coming together for the common good. That does, I think, start with the budget. Starts with being able to have a rational process for opening and running our government. But it extends to lots of other things. And if we could get some kind of broader political agreement, there would be many, many benefits, I think, on immigration, on the farm bill, on other legislation.
Do you see anything possible on a public works bill? I know we had stimulus in the past, and we've had 43 consecutive months of growth, and unemployment's leveled off a little bit, but like you said, to kind of jumpstart the economy, any possibility of something like that on the horizon?
Well, the president has had a proposal for a long time to do more on the infrastructure front, by which he mainly means the transportation infrastructure. We've made a little headway in the Congress on a water resources bill that would offer some support there, but we're not doing anything near what we should do. I'd say the main vehicle for that, if we can get it done, would be a multi-year transportation bill that would get us back into the business of building highways, would maybe provide some new mechanisms for financing that, since the gas tax has about run out of gas, you might say. Let us have new starts again on transit. I mean, the Triangle area really could use that, and I'd love to see us be on that list of areas that is diversifying our transportation system. That would be my candidate to both get the economy going and also to build for the future. A good, solid transportation bill.
Well, we've got an election coming in 2014. We're in early November now. Any predictions for anything big we can see coming out before the holidays?
Well, there's some big elections in neighboring states. Looks like maybe Terry McAuliffe may be the next governor of Virginia. He was greatly benefited by the government shutdown because people just didn't like what they saw, and they really knew who was to blame. Big elections, of course, in this state in 2014, and some very, very important municipal elections very, very soon now. I think there's a lot stirring out there. Moral Mondays, of course, is the tip of the iceberg. To have thousands of people coming out every week, I mean, something is stirring in this state. People are realizing, I think education maybe is the main issue behind this. People just don't like the idea of going back to the bottom in what we're paying our teachers, taking the assistants out of the classroom, and on and on. I mean, people understand public education is a crown jewel of North Carolina. Why would we degrade that? And it goes on from there. Medicaid denials, voter suppression. There's just a lot that has people riled up, and the challenge is, as always, to focus, to understand what's going on, and then to act on it effectively, and ultimately to translate that passion into votes and seats, so that we have a compatible majority in the legislature, nationally, state level, to do the people's work.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today, Congressman Price.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
I'm Jeannie Bonds. This is Plain Talk Politics. You can get a daily update on everything in North Carolina politics at plaintalkpolitics.com, and our companion radio show is on Wednesday mornings, mywaug.com at 8:30 a.m. We'll be back next week.